Dee. She's part of one of the most famous families in the world, but for the first time, Riley Keough has opened up about the death of her mother, Lisa Mare Presley, in a moving interview with Oprah in Graceland.
She would tell me that sometimes she would find him in his bathroom, looking kind of out of it or holding on to the railing to stand up straight. And she also wrote these letters when she was little that we have kind of saying, "I hope my daddy doesn't die." She pulled me aside and said, "I've been taking opiates. And at first I was taking them for pain, then I was taking them to sleep, but now it's like I'm taking them for fun."
One of the ways she grieved your brother was to bring the coffin into the home. And it was in the home for how long?
It was about 2 months. The last sort of 3 weeks that she was alive, I was with her a few times that I felt worried. I think there was always sort of an undertone for me because of this feeling that I was on borrowed time with her, so.
After Ben's death.
That interview, as you see, is wide-ranging there. It was promoting Lisa Mare's memoir, From Here to the Great Unknown, that daughter Riley finished after Lisa Mare's untimely death in 2023. For more, we're joined by author and Elvis expert Sally Hoedel, live from Michigan. Sally, thanks for joining us here. I mean, it's a fascinating interview, isn't it? Riley revealed during it that she's angry at her grandfather, Elvis. Why was that?
Yes, thanks for having me. Both the book and the interview are so revealing, I have to say. And I think if we look at the experiences that Riley had at Graceland from a very young age, we can see why she connects some of that to her grandfather, to Elvis, and has that anger. You know, Lisa Mare often talked about how those years at Graceland were the happiest years of her life, up until when she was 9 years old. You know, she tragically lost her father, and she wanted to recreate that for her own children, and she did. She took Riley and the kids back to Graceland as often as she could, and they had big family dinners in the dining room, and the kids would jump on that long white couch in the living room and ride the golf carts all over the property, and lots of joyful memories. But I think what Riley was most attuned to at that time, where she seemed to understand about her mother more than most, is Graceland was also where Lisa really reconnected with her grief, and it was extra heavy there. And she witnessed that. And Riley talked about how she connected that to her grandfather, you know, in an angry way of, why did you have to leave my mother when she was only 9 and cause all this pain that Riley could still see in her mother as you know, she became an adult.
Well, we heard Riley there speak about the opioids. You know, a major revelation in that interview was how Lisa Mare's opioid use, after the birth of her twins, sent her heart into failure.
Yeah, we know from the book that she experimented with cocaine and things like that at a young age, and she talks in the book about how she was surprised that addiction didn't really hit her until she was 40, because she knew it was a problem in her family. And it did happen after she left the hospital after the birth of her twins from a C-section. She was sent home with an opioid prescription, and it just very quickly spiraled into a serious addiction. And I think, you know, if Elvis was trying to self-medicate through a lot of health issues and continue to be Elvis Presley, I think when she took those opioids, it might have released her from some of that heavy grief that she was feeling for 3 decades. And that numb feeling might have been, you know, a little bit of relief that she needed, but it quickly turned into addiction, and it lasted for many years. And then eventually it became 80 pills a day, she says, combined with alcohol, which is the real problem. You know, separately they're bad, together it's really bad. And it did lead to a serious heart issue, which led to rehab, and she was able to deal with the problem and stop.
Yeah, but the toll that takes on the system is just obviously had its consequences as well. Lisa Mare never got over her son Ben's death. You know, Oprah reveals during this interview that Lisa Mare had the coffin, and we just saw it then in that clip, in the home for 2 months. And then they got matching tattoos of Ben's too. Just tell us about that. It seems for a lot of people, I think that's an unusual thing to do.
Absolutely, and I can't speak to the length of time. I think 2 months is highly unusual. I can't begin to bring sense to that myself. However, I think we have to remember that Lisa Mare comes from a generation where having a wake at home, having a body laid state at home was a common thing. It was common across the United States up into the mid-1950s. Gladys was laid out at Graceland when she died in 1958. And when Elvis passed in 1977, he was also laid out at Graceland. And Lisa Mare in the book talks about how those, you know, that evening at Graceland when she was able to go down and spend time with her father, and she held his hand and touched his face as she sat next to the casket, that extra time with him meant everything to her as a 9-year-old. She was able to say goodbye. She was able to try to make sense and ask those questions of, why did you have to leave me like this? And then when Vernon died 2 years later, her grandfather, he laid in state, and she had that time with the body as well. So I think when Ben died, that was just a natural way for her to have extra time to say goodbye to Ben. Because it's what she had experienced from, the previous generation, is how they handled death. But the time frame, like I said, 2 months is a very long time. And then she did want to have matching tattoos made. So Riley tells the story of how they had a tattoo artist out to the house. He asked if there was a picture of the tattoo, and she said no. And then she took the artist into the room where Ben was and showed him the tattoos. And the tattoo artist was very gracious and replicated them. But, Riley kind of laughed about it a little as one of the top 5 strangest experiences of her lifetime. But if you know anything about Lisa and her dad, Elvis, if they had an idea, they found a way to make it happen. And Lisa needed that extra time with Ben, and she found a way to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, Riley's just faced so much grief in her life, and the future of Graceland is in her hands now. Do you think she'll keep her family's legacy alive?
I think so, and I hope she keeps it alive within her own family. I think writing this book was an incredible way for her to process her grief and the family's grief over time, so that hopefully, she can take her children and her sisters, and they can go back there and recapture some of that joy. And of course, the meditation garden where Elvis' family are laid to rest, and now Lisa and Ben, it's a place to mourn and to pay respects. And it's hard for fans to see a new generation of Presleys there with Lisa Mare and Ben. So I can't imagine how hard that is for the family, but I hope over time it becomes more of a joyful place than a sad one.
Yeah, a place of healing, perhaps. Well, we really appreciate your insight here, Sally. Thank you so much for your time. And, of course, Lisa Mare's book, which has been written a little bit with Riley as well, From Here to the Great Unknown, is out now. Still